Now, of course, it's one thing to say wants and needs are important, or rivalry is important, whatever. It's another thing entirely having a very specific, very structured, very measurable way of thinking about each of these things, right? So to make the grid as pragmatic and actionable as possible, what we really need to do is introduce one more level of detail that allows us to make very specific decisions about things. And over the 5 years that we worked on this, we're actually able to refine it down to 3 things within each of these boxes. Now, it can be a lot to take in at first glance, but the great thing about this is all of these concepts pretty much will already be familiar to you. So if you look at the revenues box, for example, it's clear that your revenues are determined by your revenue model. Is it subscription or pay-as-you-go? The price that you charge, and then the volume of things that you sell at that price, right? So there's nothing clever there. To build your customer base, first they've got to know that you exist, that's awareness. Then they've got to join you, you've got to acquire them as a customer, that's acquisition. And then you don't want them to go anywhere else, that's retention. The power of the grid isn't in introducing new revolutionary concepts to people, it's in allowing them to consider all of the factors that matter simultaneously when they're making a decision. So rather than going through these 27 things one at a time, which is going to be really boring, what I'm going to do instead is try and bring them to life with a couple of examples that illustrate these 2 key themes. First, that you can't ignore any one of these things, and second, that you can't change one without it having an impact somewhere else. And the first example I'm going to use is a cupcake shop called Need a Cake from my hometown of Reading in England. Now, the lady who owned this business, a lady called Rachel Brown, had a fairly simple goal. She wants to sell more cakes. She wants to increase her sales volume. Right? So she thinks, how am I going to do that? I need to get some new customers. So she's going to focus on acquisition. And in order to acquire those new customers, of course, they need to know that she exists. So she needs to advertise. She needs to raise awareness. This is something that businesses do day in, day out, right? All makes sense. So she thinks, how am I going to do that? How am I going to raise awareness of my little cupcake shop? She's heard of this thing called Groupon, and she thinks, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to run a Groupon campaign, and I'm going to offer 12 of my cupcakes at a 75% discount, which is going to entice these people to come in and try out my delicious cakes. Now you can see the impact that that decision is going to have on the price right there. It's now 25% of what it is. And she thinks, maybe a couple of people will take me up on this offer, I'll wow them with my delicious cakes and incredible customer service, and then they'll come back for more. What she didn't anticipate, though, was 8,500 people placing an order. I'm not especially good at maths, but I prepared this in advance. That's 102,000 cakes that she's got to make now. Right? Now, if I can draw your attention to the adaptability box here, this is clearly way beyond her current capacity. So she's got a bit of a problem here. How is she going to tackle this problem? Well, she needs to expand that capacity, which means that she needs more people. So she goes to a recruitment agency and she gets some temporary staff. The problem with staff is that you've got to pay them. So now we've got a lower price and we've got a much higher cost. As you can only imagine, trying to scale up that quickly with temporary staff who don't really understand the business and probably don't care anyway, it's no surprise that it's going to have a bit of an impact on the customer experience here. And Rachel starts to worry that this might actually really damage her brand in the long term rather than improving it. But this is a relatively minor problem compared to the much bigger one, which is with this lower price and this higher cost. Each one of these sales is now costing her money instead of making her money. She's burning all the way through her cash reserves, taking her business right to the brink of bankruptcy. It's no surprise then that she described it as without doubt the worst business decision that she'd ever made. But what you can see here is that a change up here is going to always cause changes elsewhere. Now, it would be easy to look at this and say, well, sure, okay, but this is a village cupcake shop. We're a global enterprise. We've got MBAs, we've got gurus, we've got people with decades of experience. It would never happen here. But in fact, this is more likely to happen in a large organization than in a small one, because each one of these individual elements is being managed by a team of specialists who probably have no idea what the other people are doing. And if you're looking for evidence, look no further than these guys, General Motors, who in 2005 posted a $10.5 billion loss after they decided to sell their cars at the same price as they sold them to their own employees. Right? They wanted to increase market share, and yeah, they definitely increased market share. And a few years later, they filed for bankruptcy. This case study comes from this wonderful book by Herman Simon called Confessions of the Pricing Man.